If consciousness doesn't come from the brain, but the brain is merely a doorway, then what is it that's looking through that doorway? Maybe you've never truly been the self you thought you were. Not because you're fake, but because, from the very beginning, you forgot that you are the awareness, not the one who is aware. The universe is looking at itself through your eyes. This isn't just poetic language. It's a hypothesis, one that is bringing science and spirituality to the same table. If you've ever sat in silence and felt like you belong to something greater, this video is for you. If you believe these questions are worth sharing, hit subscribe to Journey with Buddha Balance. And send this video to someone you'd love to sit in silence with and simply understand. Today, we are not here to debate, not to prove anything, but simply to open a doorway into a space of stillness where consciousness doesn't need a reason to exist. And you are not lost in the universe. You are the universe, feeling itself through this form, this mind, this gaze. Now, take a deep breath, and let us begin this journey. Consciousness does not originate from the brain, it is the flow of the universe. When this arises, that arises. When this ceases, that ceases. Samyutta Nikaya. Introduction, when the ego gets electrified. Have you ever looked up at a star-filled sky and wondered, who am I? Not in a philosophical sense, but in a very practical way. What exactly is this thing inside my head that's doing all the thinking? Science says it's all in the brain, a bunch of neurons, synapses, and bioelectric signals, like a biological version of Google. But then quantum physics came along, like a bolt of electricity, and suddenly, everything we thought was certain began to unravel. What if the brain is just a radio, and consciousness is the wave? What if reality doesn't even exist until someone observes it? And if that's true, then who is looking at you? Imagine lying on a beach under a crescent moon. Waves gently lapping, the salty breeze brushing your skin, and the night sky unfolding like a cosmic book. In that moment, you feel, not think, but feel, that something greater is observing alongside you. Not a someone, but the act of seeing itself. A wordless awareness, as if life is looking back at itself through your eyes. Are you certain that you are the one looking? Or are you the looking itself? And if that's the case, then can a brain, barely 1.5 kilograms, truly contain such a vast sky of awareness? Carl Sagan, the renowned astronomer, once said, "We are the way for the cosmos to know itself." A simple sentence, but one that has made millions pause in silence. When you gaze at the stars, don't forget, you, too, are made of stardust. So perhaps, when you look at the sky, the universe is looking at itself through you. Then, who or what is truly gazing at the stars? If consciousness isn't inside the head, but the head is floating within a sea of consciousness, then maybe we are all sharing the same universal current. Like waves that seem separate, but rise and fall in the same ocean. The participatory universe. Physicist John Wheeler once said, "The universe is a participatory universe." This idea stems from a strange phenomenon in quantum physics known as the observer effect. When a particle, like an electron or photon, is not being observed, it exists as a probability wave, a wave function, simultaneously in multiple potential states. But the moment it is observed, that wave collapses into a single, definite state. In other words, reality appears. A famous example is the double-slit experiment. If no one is watching, an electron passes through both slits at once, creating an interference pattern, like a wave. But the moment you place a measuring device at the slits, the electron behaves like a particle, going through only one slit, and the wave pattern disappears. It's as if it's performing. As if reality is waiting to see whether you're watching, before deciding how to present itself. To put it humorously, it's like you're lounging on your bed watching YouTube in your weirdest pose. But the moment the webcam light turns on, you sit up straight like, oh no, someone's watching, better act serious. This raises a profound question. What role does consciousness play in creating reality? Is reality inherently vague and chaotic, only becoming shaped when it is observed? Or in other words, does the universe not exist independently, but needs an observer to activate it? If so, the observer is not just someone who watches, but an essential part of the universe itself. In Buddhist philosophy, this is known as dependent origination, paticca samuppada. Nothing exists in isolation, everything arises in relation to something else. There is no observed object without an observer, and vice versa. So then, does consciousness create reality? Or is it the gateway through which reality becomes visible? Just like sunlight is always present. But only when you open your eyes do you see the world. Perhaps we do not create the world, but we are the place through which the world is seen. Or maybe, consciousness is being borrowed, so that reality may reveal itself. The brain is a tool, not the source. Most of us believe that consciousness originates in the brain, like heat coming from a light bulb. But what if consciousness isn't a product, but a flow? Imagine the brain as a television. When you turn it on, images appear. You can watch Netflix, a documentary, or a cooking show. But clearly, the program doesn't exist inside the TV. The TV merely decodes and displays a signal. And when the TV breaks, the broadcast doesn't disappear, it still exists. You've just lost the device to receive it. Likewise, if the brain is a receiving and interpreting device, then consciousness is the signal, always present in the background field of reality. This is how many scientists, especially in quantum physics and emerging neuroscience, are beginning to rethink the nature of consciousness. In Buddhism, consciousness is one of the 5 aggregates: form, feeling, perception, mental formations, consciousness, and none of them are the self. They are dynamic processes, constantly changing, not a solid me behind them. The Buddha taught, consciousness is not self. For if it were self, it would not lead to suffering. Anandalakkhana Sutta, Discourse on the Not-Self Characteristic. From this view, consciousness is not yours. It's more like a radio wave being received by a device called the brain. And when the device breaks, the wave isn't gone, there's simply no receiver left. This opens up a radical possibility. Consciousness is not within you, you are within consciousness. Just like a ripple cannot be separated from the ocean, your mind is a temporary vibration in the vast sea of awareness. And if that's the case, then the question is no longer where does consciousness come from, but rather, why is it expressing itself through you right now? This is no longer just a scientific inquiry. It becomes a profound invitation to contemplate. If consciousness is a formless current pervading the entire universe, then you, with all that you are, your pain, your joy, your childhood memories, your quiet afternoons, are a unique convergence point that this current has chosen to take form through. Perhaps you don't need to find a reason out there. Maybe your very existence is already part of the cosmic equation, like a single note in a symphony that has no composer. And if that's true, then every breath you take, every glance, every moment of wonder you feel toward the world, is the universe experiencing itself in one of its most poetic forms, you. Quantum synchrony, where Buddhism meets science. James Glatfelder, a complexity physicist, proposes that consciousness cannot be a random byproduct of evolution. He suggests that the universe seems to be intentionally constructing ultra-complex structures, like the human brain, as channels for consciousness. It's as if the universe is playing Lego with itself. This idea challenges us to reconsider the role of conscious life. Could it be that human beings, with their capacity to feel, reflect, and question, are not an evolutionary accident, but a deliberate outcome of a self-organizing universe? In Buddhism, this is not a new concept. Everything arises through dependent origination, pratyaya samuppada. Nothing comes into being independently. There is no eternal self, no fixed center. Sunyata, or emptiness, is not nothingness, but the open, boundless ground from which all phenomena arise. Because all things are interdependent, no single entity, not even the self, can exist in isolation or permanence. If Glatfelder refers to this as syncretic idealism, the Buddha referred to it simply as emptiness, a state of non-attachment to ego, where all phenomena dance like music without a musician. Yet the melody plays on, perfectly and effortlessly. In this light, consciousness may not have emerged by chance, but could very well be the hidden aim of the entire evolutionary arc. As if the universe planted seeds, so that one day it could finally see itself. Through human eyes, through sorrow, through laughter, and even through the very questions we ask about its nature. A Tibetan monk once said, "Every time you sit in stillness and look into your own mind, you are doing the work of the entire universe, illuminating itself." The problem of the self, mistaking the player. We often say, "I'm living my life." But what if this I is merely an illusion, created by biological and psychological processes? A Zen master once said, "The enlightened one doesn't gain anything new, but simply lets go of what they once mistook as themselves." If the brain is a mirror, then consciousness is the light shining into it. But the mirror forgets that it merely reflects, and begins to believe it is the light. When we think, "I am thinking," what's actually happening is just a stream of thought. And there is no solid thinker behind it. Like waves on the ocean, they appear distinct, yet are nothing more than temporary expressions of the same water. In modern neuroscience, studies on the illusory self show that our sense of I can be manipulated, altered, or even dissolved. As seen in deep meditation, near-death experiences, or under the effects of psychedelics. Buddhism recognized this over 2,500 years ago. There is no one thinking, only thought occurring. No one feeling sad, only sadness arising. And when we no longer cling to the self as a fixed entity, the suffering, which clings to that illusion, also begins to unravel. Another Zen teacher once compared the self to a character in a play. The ego is like a role on stage, you become so absorbed in it. You forget you were ever just acting. But when the play ends, you don't disappear. You simply return to who you've always been. Someone who never needed that role to exist. So perhaps the real issue is not whether the self exists or not, but that we've believed in it too much. So much that we spend an entire lifetime protecting an illusion. The universe sees through your eyes. Imagine this. Every time you open your eyes, the universe is looking at itself, through you. If consciousness is the foundation of reality, not a mere byproduct, then you are not a meaningless speck of dust floating in space. You are the awareness of the universe itself. In seeing, there is only the seen. In hearing, only the heard. Bhaya Sutta. And when you no longer identify as the one who sees, but as the seeing itself, then suffering begins to dissolve like a bubble in sunlight. Here's the strange, beautiful truth. Perhaps you've never been an isolated self. You are a window, a temporary opening in the fabric of the infinite, through which life gazes upon itself. A crack in eternity where the light of awareness shines through, to feel, to understand, to love. A child looks up at the stars, not knowing their names, but feeling a quiet sadness. An old woman smiles softly as she hears a bird sing. Someone sits silently before the sea, without a single thought. These moments are not pointless or lost. They are the living expressions of the universe contemplating its own existence. You don't need to become anything grand. Just be fully present, like a flower blooming at the right season. Not for anyone, not because of anything, but simply because blooming is what it is. And perhaps that is the deepest purpose of life. For the universe to experience itself through you, in a way that is humble, beautiful, and utterly irreplaceable. If you've stayed with us until this final moment, thank you. Not because you agreed with everything in this video, but because you remained quiet enough to listen to a question that has no clear answer. Because perhaps it is not knowing that marks the true beginning of understanding. If this video resonated with you, hit subscribe to keep exploring consciousness, Buddhism, and the hidden layers of being. And if you know someone who might be searching, share this video as a quiet gift. A gentle invitation whispered into the fast-moving stream of life. Because sometimes, with just one deep, honest gaze, you'll realize that gaze is already looking back at you.